Hi everyone and welcome to the video. Today I am interviewing C.B. Lee, who is author of a number of books including Seven Tears at High Tide and the Sidekick Squad series. Seven Tears is a young adult romance featuring Selkies, and the Sidekick Squad series are a very fun take on the superhero genre with a bit of dystopia thrown in for good measure. There is another book which I have to admit I've not read called Ben 10, so I haven't got any questions planned on that one, I'm sorry. But I will hand over to C.B. Lee to say a bit more about herself.
Sure. Hello, I'm C.B. Lee. I'm from California. I am a writer. I really love writing about queer teens and superheroes and magic and friendship. So I try to fold all of those things in my books. And just no need to worry about Ben 10 actually isn't out yet. So
okay, I feel slightly better about not having read it. Okay, so and you brought up the queer teens content. So Not Your Sidekick has a bisexual protagonist, Not Your Villain has a trans protagonist, and the third one in the series that's coming out soon, I think. Can we assume that that's going to carry on the representation trend?
Yeah, so we meet all of the main group of characters in the first book, and it's about this group of their friends. They're all queer. So the third in the book, Not Your Backup, follows Emma's story. So she is on the aromantic spectrum and also asexual. So we'll learn more about her as she her journey as she kind of struggles to lead the resistance against the corrupt Heroes League of Heroes.
So is there any reason particularly why the LGBTQ representation is so important to you and such a prevailing theme in your books?
I like, as a kid growing up, I read voraciously in many genres, and I really loved fantasy and science fiction and adventure stories, all these things where predominantly the main characters were straight white boys. And while I love the stories, I really struggled with seeing any characters who looked like me or felt like me or could be a part of that world getting to have those adventures and fantastic stories and happy endings and things like that. So when I first started writing, I really wanted to center characters from marginalized backgrounds in these like really fun and fantastic stories, and have stories that were like fun and exciting and just part of where it was really like the first book I wrote. I mean, all the books were really from like my 16-year-old self. Like, what would I have wanted to read? So, but it's kind of comes back to like when I was a teenager, I really struggled a lot with my identity and like not even thinking that it existed. And seeing negative representation really made me think like, okay, like these are the kind of stories I will only ever be able to have, where it's always, there's a lot of tragedy and a lot of sadness. And I wanted to write,
happy endings.
Yeah, I wanted to write happy endings. I think it's important to have so many different types of stories. Yes, tragedy and difficult things exist, but I don't think they should be the only things that are possible.
Yeah, and on that subject of people from different backgrounds, in the Sidekick Squad series, the first book, Jess is the child of immigrants, and that plays into her character quite a lot. So is that similar ideas?
Yeah. I really wanted to have so the first book is from her point of view, and when the first time I was writing it, I was that I didn't initially set out to give her my same background, but as I was kind of like figuring out the world and how all the different countries have like fallen apart and come back together in different ways, I felt like that experience, like being the child of immigrants, is specific and yet very, like, so many people relate to it in different ways, whether it's in our current world or in a post-dystopian world. But yeah, it was a lot of fun writing, and really being in position to like, hey, like she's the main character and this is her journey, and the story is not just about her identity and her race, but it's also like her there's like the fun superhero plot, but she's Chinese and Vietnamese American, or the equivalent of America in this world, and it's part of who she is, and I just I thought that was it, for the longest time when I first started writing, I would write primarily about people that I thought was like, oh, okay, this is the kind of person who gets to have these stories. So I didn't even like center myself in these stories at all. So I would write about like I didn't realize that was what I was doing until I was like, why is it so difficult to write about people of color in a story? And like I was like, oh, because I internalized that, like, oh, we were always going to be like the side character, or like the supporting best friend, or someone in the background, or like a random stereotype in the background. And so
the goofy comic relief.
Yeah, comic relief, and someone who's there to further the storyline of someone else. And I was like, well, why am I even thinking that? Like and for the longest time I didn't even think I was like the main character in my own story. So like yeah, that's kind of where the play on the Not Your naming convention came from. So the first book, Not Your Sidekick, is really a play on like kind of that. There was a really long standing frustration with like seeing, if you did see like Asian characters in mainstream television or film at all, it would be like the sidekick. And so this was kind of my tantamount. It's like, Jess is not a sidekick, and it takes her a long time to realize that. But that kind of, the whole series like works with like themes of like expectations, and like, who does society expect you to be, and who are you really? Who are you based on your own expectations or presentations?
So, and I'm trying to avoid a spoiler here, and I don't know if you'll be able to answer this without spoilers. But in that first book, Not Your Sidekick, there is a character who it's discovered has a very unusual superpower, and something I'd not come across in this sort of genre before, and I'm just wondering where that idea came from for that particular power.
Yeah, so I actually I've seen, so shape-shifting, let's be very specific if you avoid spoilers. So one character has a power of shape-shifting,
Mm-hmm.
which I've seen used as a superpower in a few mediums, but not quite in the same way, I suppose.
It was the other slightly more spoilery power that I was specifically thinking of.
Oh, okay. Is it the power where it's not completely visible?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. So this power, actually, I wrote this deliberately because kind of my whole world is based upon this idea that like superheroes are treated like celebrities, and we have this entire society built up around like there's product placement, there's a huge rampant like consumerism and extreme capitalism around these identities and battles about from the Heroes League of Heroes and the United Villains Guild. And so it's kind of like cheesy and hokey, but it's what they know. And so when it comes down to like one of the main questions in my books is who does society decide, like how do they decide who gets to be a hero, who's named a villain, and why, and does it depend on like the type of power you have? So this power that I really thought was important for this character to have is a power that is like you don't even know that it's there. It can be quite useful once you know about it, but it's not something that would necessarily be. It's not flashy. It's not extravagant. It's not like shiny and cool to see in action because there's nothing.
doesn't have a special effects budget.
So that was that I really wanted to. I wrote that in because it was something that, like, society would be like, oh, whatever, this isn't someone that, even if we did know about this person and their powers, we wouldn't know what to do with them, like, how do you, like, how would, this society would be like, how would we elevate someone's power that we cannot even make tangible, it's not like super strength or flying or something that we could easily sell to the populace as a cool thing.
It's not a marketable skill.
Exactly.
So jumping tracks now. You've written about Selkies. Are there any other mythical creatures that you want to explore or write about?
Sure. I love werewolves and vampires. A lot of supernatural lore. I think there's been I've been knocking around a werewolf vampire buddy cop comedy in my head for a while. But I think there's a lot of opportunity for different mythologies to kind of take hold and, like, for people to write about these stories. So these are a lot of supernatural. This is a lot of supernatural lore that's, like, present in a lot of, like, Western canon. Ben 10, which is an original graphic novel that I wrote for Boom and Cartoon Network. The very first volume deals with Ben, who's a 10-year-old boy, and his cousin and his grandfather. They go on a camping adventure, and they run into a group of people who are looking for Bigfoot. And so there's that bit of lore that I had a lot of fun with, getting to play with cryptids. I think I would like to write a little bit more about, like, Southeast Asian and Asian mythologies. I think there's a lot of room for stories to be told with those backgrounds. I think there'd be a lot of fun as well. And I don't know, I've got a lot of projects that I'd be interested in working on, but I have to first finish the Sidekick Squad series and my other projects.
I know that problem. Too many ideas, not enough time. So a couple of your books have either won awards or been finalists for awards. So how did that feel? What was that experience like?
It's been really exciting to be recognized in that way. I'm really humbled and awed that they would make it to that stage and even place. Not Your Sidekick was a Lambda Literary Award finalist for young adult fiction, and I was, like, really blown away when it was named as a finalist that year, because there were so many amazing books that were also named as finalists. I was like, wow, like, really, like, me also there. But I was so incredible. It was amazing to see, and really, really validating too, that, like, oh, like, someone is reading my work, someone appreciates it, someone thinks that it's worthy of being recognized. Not Your Villain was recently named to the American Library Association's Rainbow List, which is honors a limited number of books each year, and that was happened, like, literally in the last, like, few weeks, and I was like,
congratulations.
Whoa, like, yeah, thank you. I was, what was I doing? I think I was eating, like, tater tots. And then I was like, wait, what's happening? Oh, no, I remember. I did not even realize it happened at first, because I saw a tweet where other people were being congratulated. I was like, oh, cool, a thing is happening. So I retweeted it, and I was excited for all the people named on it. And then in the particular tweet, like, I think, like, 3 different people who I knew were named on this list. And I was like, oh, cool. So I was, like, congratulating them and retweeting it, not knowing that I was also on the list.
Brilliant.
So it's been a journey. I've been really excited, and specifically, like, beyond the honors, just the fact that, like, my work is out there. Mm-hmm. When I first started writing, it was kind of like on a whim. 7 Tears at High Tide was my first novel. I wrote that as I saw an open call for submissions from Interlude Press, which had just started at the time. Interlude Press is a LGBTQ publisher that started in 2014, and so they were just launching their young adult imprint, and were looking for stories. So I had at the time I'd written a ton of fan fiction, which I love, and I remember one time I was looking at, like, my statistics on the Archive of Our Own website, and I was like, oh, that's like that's like 300,000 words. Like, that's 3 novels. And I was like, well, I feel like it was really like, it made me feel like, oh, I can do this. I can actually do this if I try, because I hadn't thought about it before. I'd always thought of novels as some huge insurmountable thing, like climbing a mountain. And I was like, oh, that's like Mount Everest. That's totally far beyond my reach. I can't possibly do that. And yet I had done the equivalent, like at least lengthwise. And so I was like, okay, I'll try my hand at it. And then Seven Tears became this novel that like just grew and grew. And I was so excited just to like hear that the editors loved it and they really wanted to work with me. And so and then with the Sidekick Squad, I was like, oh, this is something fun that I wrote for like, literally my 16-year-old self. And the fact that there are other people who want to read, even like other like 16-year-olds who, it's been really rewarding just to get like the emails and to meet like kids who are like, oh, like this means so much to me. I had like really lengthy email from a student who was so like, I like literally like I had to like stop and like cry and like then wipe my face and then keep reading and then cry again because it was so powerful. And I think that's one of the like the greatest joys for me in writing, is just to connect with other readers and for them to like connect in such a way like either like I love this character so much, or like I never thought I would get to see like a story like this. And so that's been one of my biggest loves of writing.
I'm going to ask you a very difficult question now.
Sure.
Do you have a favourite of your books?
Oh gosh, this is so difficult. Oh my gosh. I don't know what show this is from, but there's a gif of two people who are like pointing a gun at like parents, and they're like, which one is your favorite? Which child? I feel like I think my favorite would be, it's almost always like the book that I'm working on at the moment, because I get so excited about it and I love it so much. I do love all my characters. Like when I was writing Sidekick, I was in Jess's head. I was like, oh, you're so awkward, and like you don't know how to like tell people that you like them. And then I was in Belle's head, and he was really fun and like sarcastic, and had like a completely different vibe to Jess. And then now I'm writing Emma's story, and she's just really like foolhardy and like impulsive and like the ultimate like Gryffindor. And so it's really fun writing her perspective as well. And then I'm working on a few other projects that are always like, oh yes, I want to like world build more in that universe, or yeah, so I don't know. This is the worst question. Oh,
I'll take whatever I'm currently working on as the
okay.
answer to that then.
Okay.
So in what's coming up next for you? What's happening in terms of your writing?
So I'm working on I'm currently polishing up the final draft of Not Your Backup. So we're in the last stages. It's going to be released in June of 2019. I'm so excited to share her story with you. And that's kind of it is done, but I'm like, oh, here's a typo, there's a typo. I'm just the typos that persist even after like after the rounds of copy edits. I'm always amazed. Yeah. Like how did you survive? Then they do, because invariably they do.
Multiple drafts, multiple editors,
exactly.
And
hundreds of thousand words. Of course, there's going to be
and there's one that will somehow appear still in the printed version despite everything.
Oh yeah. I'll read the printed version and be like, what is that comma doing there? That hanging period? I don't know. I've had like readers comment too, like, oh, there's a typo. Did you know? And I'm like, I know. It's terrible. So I'm working. So that will be out in June. Ben 10, The Truth Is Out There, will be out in March, actually within a few weeks. And then there's another volume in that graphic novel series out in July. So there's going to be 3, and then there's more books to be announced. So it's been really fun working with that. especially as I've watched the show on Cartoon Network when I was younger. So it's been really fun to be part of that universe now and writing for it. And then I'm working on a fantasy that I can't say too much about, but I will say that there are dragons and magical coffee and girls trying to date across if I say what see dragons, magical coffee, and girls.
Okay, well, fair enough. So where should people go if they want to find out more about you or your writing or your books? Where should they go?
You can find me. My website is cb-lead.com. There's a lot of links to my socials there, but if you want to jump to it, my Twitter is author_CBLee, and my Instagram is CBLee_CBLee. I also have a Facebook, but I always forget what to post there.
Cool. I'll post links to those in the description for this video if anybody's interested.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your time. This has been really interesting.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
If you've enjoyed this interview, please remember to like and subscribe. And if you have any suggestions of people you'd like to see me interview or other ideas for topics I can tackle in the writer advice videos, please leave a note in the comments below.